Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to another session on Pull Up a Sandbag with Joe. Hi, my name's Joe O'Connor, founder and CEO of the Transformer Company, and I help veteran business owners and those who support veterans become bigger, better and bolder versions of themselves. And I do this in three key areas: health, wealth and mindset. Now, we always start with a review of what's gone on the week that was, if you like. Now, what I've been doing this week is I've been reviewing what's gone on in the world and what I find interesting. And you may be interested to know about magic mushrooms, right? Now, I remember as a young lad, I discovered magic mushrooms, and I didn't actually have a go myself, not that I can recall anyway. I did see the effects though. Friends of mine used to make magic mushroom tea or eat the magic mushrooms, and they had some interesting experiences, some good, some not so good. And recently they've been looking at the effect of magic mushrooms and how they can be used to control or help with depression. And under a controlled regime run by Professor David Nutt. What a great name. David Nutt of the Imperial College has been doing some tests with his team. And the psilocybin is the chemical in the magic mushrooms. And what they've discovered is that compared to other antidepressant drugs, this works differently in that it affects what you do differently. Now, if you're thinking about taking the magic mushrooms on your own, right, Professor Nutt has actually said this can be quite dangerous, if you like, because you can have a bad trip. In fact, the use of it does take you through a process of emotional realization where you could relive and re-experience the things that have been holding you down. But the fact is that where antidepressants usually take 6 to 8 weeks to work, and I'll be having a guest sometime in the future who's going to discuss what they think of chemical intervention as opposed to hypnotherapy and other types of treatment. Anyway, Professor Nutt says that the normal antidepressant route takes about 4 to 6 weeks, maybe even 8 weeks, whereas with the magic mushroom treatment, what they've found is that the experience is so rapid that you can let everything go within a few hours. And I know from the work that I've done with people where we did massive trials. And by the way, when I was learning how to become a trainer in these sorts of areas, what we did is we tested it on each other to make sure that we could actually use it. And I know that within a few hours there was a realization where they were cured. Now, the fact is that you may have to revisit it from time to time because you may get other hang-ups, but that's an amazing development, and I'm so pleased that they're doing something along these lines, and the tests are continuing, so watch this space. Then looking over to a different part of the world in the East, I was saddened to hear that Yu Wenming, an 82-year-old man living in Shanghai, told the party's secretary, Zhang Zhen, that I've used up all my medicines. Now, there's been things going on where people are in lockdown and they're being left for weeks, and it's actually becoming quite an issue now. And up to 40% of China's gross domestic product, that's the profit that they make from exports, etc., is estimated to be under some form of lockdown. Now, my take on this is, we've got to be careful because the mighty can fall. And it's interesting that the West, we've made arrangements and tested things where we're not such a dictatorship, if you like, and we've introduced science and looked at things, and we're getting back to as some form of, as this word's commonly used now, normality. The fact is that China may well be advised to have a look at what they can do, because Zhang Zhen, the party secretary, has even said that he's considering his position in the future. So watch this space again to see what goes on in that instance. Closer to home, Johnson and Sunak. It reminds me of something that I used to watch as a boy, and a phrase that I heard regularly. That's another fine mess you've gotten me into. And it does remind me of the Laurel and Hardy sketches. And it seems that, and it's said that from reading various things, that these two are said to be detached from reality. Now, as you know, I served in the military, and you can take the man out of the army, you can't take the army out of the man, or the woman, in fact, for that matter. Now, I know, and for you, if you've had military service, you'll know that by now, we'd have had a short, sharp visit to the guard room for some pokey drill, had we been found guilty of flouting any laws that we actually set ourselves. So, isn't it interesting that Sunak and Johnson just continue in their positions without regard to the law? Now, what do you think about the Conservative Party? Do you think that behind the scenes they do want something to happen and they do want Johnson removed? And if they do, what's stopping them? Could it be that there's no replacement for Johnson, and because Sunak isn't the blue-eyed boy, if you like, anymore, is he? That's what I'm told. So, what do you think could happen in the future? I'd be interested to find out what your opinion is, because I think that the next 6 to 12 months will be interesting. So, staycation. Easter weekend, we saw some interesting sights with the airports. Manchester Airport was on the news. The chief executive resigned. Then we've had the P&O debacle, where the team, 800 staff, were actually fired, and new people, replacements, were hired. And then P&O have been grounded, effectively, by not having the correct safety procedures in place. So while all that's been going on, there's been a pent-up demand for people to go away. And I'm so pleased that we've got rid of the north-south divide, right? Because when you can travel, there is no north-south divide, and you can use a train, use coaches, use your own transport, and with panoramic views to be seen in Dorset, Cornwall, Wales, the lakes, and Scotland, and all over on the east coast as well. In fact, everywhere in the UK, when you've got good weather especially, there are great sights to be seen. So it's great to see that people are getting out, and I think that the summer months will see us a lot more spending time in the UK and just looking at the beauty that beholds us and it is available to us in this country. Something else I'd like to talk about is what next for Russia. Now, I have a great deal of respect for the Ukrainian people and, of course, the veterans, the military and veterans who have returned back to serve. That shows courage, remarkable strength, resilience and commitment to the country. And the Premier of Ukraine is showing amazing strength when only some years ago the guy was seen as a comedian, and in fact that was his profession. Now leads a country, and I want to see how we're going to continue to support that, being the UK, Europe and the US and other parts of the world as well, because I think the stand for the freedom could represent much more for the global collective. What do you think the next 6 months and 12 months will bring? Moving on next to Bridge Over Troubled Water, a song you may remember from Simon and Garfunkel. Absolutely brilliant song and fit for royalty. And in fact, Harry and Meghan came across with a secret visit to their nan, the Queen. And I'm pleased to see that they're building a bridge over troubled water to bring them back together. And then from there, Harry and Meghan moved on to the Netherlands to start and give an opening speech at the Invicta Games, which is a brilliant organised event for members of the military community to come together to compete at high level. And over the next few days, that will continue. And finally, while we're experiencing difficulty with high expenses, I'm going to be doing after the Standing on the Shoulder of Giants session on the health, wealth, mindset, I'll be looking at what you can do to help you get through the troubled times we're having with the economy and the way that energy prices and fuel prices and the cost of living is increasing. So I'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much for tuning in and look forward to the next session, which is Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, shortly. Thank you. Hello, and this is the section in the podcast where I get to interview a giant, someone who really knows their stuff about a particular subject, a subject that you could well be interested in. And the guests will be from the military community, the veteran community, and the business community, who are recognised as leaders and experts in their field. So I can ask them some great questions so they can give some fantastic answers to provide you with the information you need to become bigger, better, and bolder versions of yourselves in 3 key areas: health, wealth, and mindset. Hi, Steve. Right. A very good welcome to you today, and you are the prize guest for today, the very first guest to Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. Thank you so much. So with me today, I have Steve Harrison. Now, I've written I've jotted a few notes down here, but to say, I'll just give you an idea of the caliber of this gentleman. Now, apart from the fact that he really helps me lots and he supports veterans wholeheartedly, because as you know, one of the qualifications of coming on the Standing on the Shoulder of Giants is you are a veteran business owner, or indeed you support veterans in one way, shape or form. Stephen has had over 35 years in the sales and marketing industry, profession, sector. He sold in a matter of years £3 million worth of products over the phone. So this man is a guru on the phone. And he's had over 4,000 client consultations, and he still drives on. And right, so Stephen, good day and welcome to you. Great to have you here.
Thank you,
I'm
Joe.
so pleased that you just interrupted your holiday to join us today. So how are you doing?
Well, that's very kind of you. When I heard that you were doing this, and you're obviously asking me the stuff that I'm very, very, very particularly enthused about. So it's never a problem if you love what you do.
That's quite true. Yeah. Thank you for that. Now I've got a couple of burning questions for you. Burning for me anyway, because I want to know the answers, because I've watched you over the years and we've had some great chats, and it always enthuses me to see how positive you are. So what I want to ask you is, what's the one secret you have to your success?
Oh, that's a good deep question, Joe, to start me off. Thanks very much, mate. Well, I think, Joe, like everything else, selling is not just about business. You know, the people that, you guys are going to be listening to this and watching this potentially in the future, selling is about communication, and this applies to your personal life as well as your commercial life. So a lot of the things I want to talk about today and share with you and your people, Joe, and your community, is the fact that a lot of this stuff can be used in a personal capacity as well as a business capacity, even though a lot of the stuff that I've been involved in over the last 35, 40 years have been in business. And when I say about business, I mean business to business, B2B, not B to P, not business to people, not retail. That's a whole different segment and sector. I'm talking about when somebody's got a widget and they want to sell it to somebody else who wants to buy a widget. You know, so a business to business scenario. But as I say, the people that will be listening today hopefully will take something out of it from a personal basis as well. So to answer your question, really the secret, which I think this will resonate with you, Joe, more than anybody I know, and is that people don't set goals.
Yeah.
And if you don't set goals, every road leads there. You don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
And, an old expression is never start the day until it's written down on paper.
Yeah. I use that regularly. I remember hearing that once. Yeah.
And as I said to you, Joe, this is not just about a commercial application. This is about a personal application. You know, if you want to be doing something, you've got to start setting some goals. And as the great David Heiner said many years ago, set big, fat, hairy ones.
Yeah, love that.
You know, so I think, setting goals and starting the day off by writing it down, right? The day you're going to have. Do you know what? You've got a much better chance of getting that day, Joe. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's interesting you say that. So what you're saying there is, like, start the day finished. Make sure that you just, instead of just jumping out of bed at the last minute, just before you've got to be somewhere, just spend a little time getting up a little bit earlier, processing your day, writing stuff down, or even do it the night before, start it, process it during your sleep, and then wake up and get it all down.
Joe, I think, some of the things that you've been writing, some of the books you've been writing, and some of the programs that you've been writing, you talk about this a lot because you and I have spoken about this very, very much indeed. And one of the key things is that as well as starting the day by writing it down, what about ending the day and reviewing your day?
Yeah.
And saying, what did I do well? What did I do badly? What could I have done better? What could have I avoided? What could I have done that somebody else could have done for me? How much did I procrastinate? How much did I spend looking at useless emails on my computer? For how many hours have I spent wasting? Because as you know, Joe, the time's clicking, that we don't get it back. So, and I'm not going to get all philosophical on us today, but it's true, let's start the day with some goals and then let's review the day. So success is based on on that very basic principle, irrespective if it's personal that you're looking to do or it's a commercial and a business application.
Exactly, yeah. Which moves me on to something else, which is inextricably linked. What drives you? Because I know you've been successful and you still are successful in your own right. What drives you now to just want to continue helping others succeed?
Joe, one of the key things is being a consultant, moreover, and obviously running my own business as well as a consultancy for many, many years and in partnership with other people too. I think one of the key things that drive me and still drive me and will continue to drive me, and this will resonate with you as well, Joe, I guess, is the fact that I love to see the change in people's lives.
Yeah, yeah.
And it sounds very gushy and gooey, but to sit down with a business person who maybe has 2 or 3 employees or is a single, owner driver, as I call them, in business, is I love to see the change not only in themselves and their confidence, and I'll come to that in a minute, also the change in the money that they make. And in the change and the increase in the money that they make, that makes an incredible difference to the people that they employ.
Yeah.
It makes a massive difference to the families of these people. It makes a massive difference to the wives and the children and the friends of these people and themselves. And so if I can achieve that, I don't just touch one person. I'm touching dozens of people indirectly.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'll get handsomely paid for it too, because I don't mind being justly rewarded for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm very happy that oft misquoted line in the Bible, money is the root of all evil. It's not money is the root of all evil. It is the love of money that is the root of all evil.
Yeah, that's a great point, that, actually, yeah.
It's great. I love to celebrate the fact that we can earn money and we can be justly rewarded for the things that we do for other people.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a challenge in standing up and saying I'm happily getting paid to make a difference.
Yeah, and that resonates with me because I know that charities, for instance, cannot help and outreach to the amount of people that they do if they've got no money. Because you need money to be able to change. Whether that's right or wrong, that's just the way it is in the world. You need money to be able to impact on people's lives. And I mean, the current situation is a great point of how money can help to transform people's lives and make things easier.
I can give you a prime example, Joe, of and what you've expressly asked me off camera and requested from me, and I'm sure others as well, is that this is not just let's talk about me 30 minutes, 40 minutes. This is about how can we really give some real world ideas, skills and processes to people. Because I know I want to give value to you today, Joe, and the people and the guys and the girls that are listening to this today. But let's just pretend today, let's just assume at the moment a lot of them may be involved in some kind of business or supporting a business or potentially thinking of going into business or working in a sales and marketing environment for somebody else. They may be an employee.
Yeah. Where
selling is a big part of their job. And by the way, Joe, in some direct or indirect way, for every day of our lives, being it personal or business, we are selling.
Yeah.
And that is the basic principle. We are selling. We are getting something. We're getting somebody to do something.
Yeah.
So
we're
selling something.
Going on a first date, you have to sell yourself, don't you?
So here's one of the key things, Joe, that I want to just mention about. If you are in business and you're listening to this, one of the key challenges I have, or one of the key questions I ask when I first meet a client, and it doesn't matter what this client is, but a lot of the clients I've had in the past have potentially been owner, driver, consultants, speakers and trainers, a lot of them. Also, many different types of business, widget makers, all sorts of different facets of business. But let's say it's a consultant. One of the first things I ask, one of the first questions, Joe, that comes to my mind, and I go, what's your elevator pitch like?
Yeah.
They say, I haven't got one. And I say, well, how do you interact with somebody for the first time? When they go, hey, you're an interesting guy. What do you do? Have you got your pitch ready? And I don't like the word pitch. And we don't have elevators here. We have lifts in here. So
yeah,
it's an Americanism.
And it's like an authority statement then, if you like.
You're absolutely right. It's really that you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. Sorry, that's cliche number one. I'm sure I'll be full of cliches today. But, that is so true.
Yeah.
We have got one chance to impress somebody or to connect with someone or to resonate with someone. And if we haven't got that right and polished and practiced, then we've got a much higher chance of that client, that customer, that lover, that whatever connection it is, to pass us by.
Yeah.
And that chance and opportunity is gone, Joe. I always say a sale, irrespective if it's a personal, emotional sale or a business sale, it's like a cockroach. It's like a bug, like an insect. If you step on it, you can't resurrect it.
Yeah.
Dead. And you've got one chance. And so looking at an elevator and looking at the elevator pitch and looking at their offer, whatever their offer is the first step into success, because you've got to connect with somebody in the beginning, and we're still human beings. Now, COVID has changed that, Joe. I don't know that, but we're still connecting physically, emotionally with other human beings.
Yeah.
It's the bread of life.
Can I ask you? I'd like you to address something, because I know you have an absolutely staunch way of putting together an elevator pitch. Could you just go through the structure of it to give a bit of a guidance for our
Well, very simple, Joe. And it's a great question. I wasn't going to mention it today, but thank you for pushing me on this, because I think it's important, and you guys listening to this today will hopefully take this on board and perhaps try and use it. I've always called it the 4-stage process.
Right. Okay.
And funnily enough, there's 4 stages in it.
Well, what a surprise.
What a surprise. Now, the first stage is what we've got to try and understand is what are our customers' needs and wants, right? But not just for their needs and wants, but what's our future clients? What's our future prospects, let's say? What's keeping them awake at night? What's upsetting them? What are they not sure about? What are their main challenges in their business or in their lives? This is the first stage. We've got to enunciate that.
Yeah.
And I'll explain that in a minute. The second stage is, how does it affect them? Does it affect them physically? Does it affect them emotionally? Does it affect them financially? Does it affect all three? Because normally the three are all affected at the same time.
Yeah.
If you've been affected emotionally, it's probably going to have a big effect on you physically and the way you earn money.
Yeah.
Irrespective if you're in business or working for somebody else or what. So all of these things. So the second stage is, how does it affect them? What's the cost? That's the question I want you to keep in your minds. What's it costing them? For them not to have that in their life or to have this in their business, whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
So that's the key. What's the cost? And by the way, if it can ever become a financial cost that you can enunciate and point at, then all of a sudden the charges that you may charge them to fix that problem becomes not an issue. And I'll come back to that in a second. So that's number 2. Number 3 is what you do. What's your CV? Where do you come from? What's your skill set?
Yeah.
How have you worked with other people in the past? So that's a little bit about you. And the fourth and not least is that how can you positively affect that person by working with them? What's the upside?
Yeah.
What's the positives of working with that person?
That makes
Now, if you
sense.
can use that in your elevator pitch, in your offer, then I will guarantee you, Joe, that if somebody takes the time to plan that out and build that offer, their response rate, their conversion rate will be significantly higher.
That makes total sense. So really it's about structure, which is great because we love structure in the military, right? So to have that going forward, so find out what they need, build the offer, make sure it meets the needs and the cost, and then tell them a bit about you. And the magical thing is it doesn't need to go on. It's not a diatribe. It's not going to last for 5 minutes. It's just like 60 seconds, isn't it? You just put all
it can be. This is not some colloquy. This is not some rendition that you've got to stand up and talk about. A lot of people use it in networking events, for instance, where you've probably got a couple of minutes to impress somebody.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of businesses have used networking, and I know that you have been running and will be running and still be running a very successful business networking group. But you know, sometimes networking, you have that couple of minutes to resonate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if not, somebody stepped on you, and you're not going to resurrect it.
No.
So you better have a good polished pitch.
Yeah. And that's great you said that, because that's the reason why it's named the elevator's pitch. Because if you're going from the first floor or the ground floor to the 10th floor, you've got that. And I've done this actually, and they looked at me as though I was a bit mad. Everyone turns and looks at the door and they're looking at the numbers. I just stood at the door, faced in, and I know you've used this as well, because we like having a laugh, don't we? And we just say, the reason I've called this meeting is, and they looked at me a bit strange, and then we all just had a laugh. And I said, so what do you do? And it was great, because it just broke down the ice, because so many people fail to communicate the message and just how lovely they are.
I think it's so right. And this comes back to the other three key areas that I want to talk about. But just to round off that particular part of this conversation is that your offer is important. And if you're making a series of statements to somebody, by the way, here's another thing. Here's another little skill, a little tip I'll give you guys. If you're ever making a series of statements about yourself, about what you can do for somebody, about your background, about the business, the widgets you've got that you're selling, whatever that is. If you make a statement, always follow that statement with a question. Because if they answer the question, they'll never question the statement.
Yeah.
Let me just clarify that for you once more. If you ask a question, always follow it with a statement and with a question. You're making a statement, because if they answer the question, they will never question the statement.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I get
Which
that.
means that they have subconsciously taken on board what you've said and accepted it. Let me give you an example. I'll speak to someone today and say, oh, by the way, I'm a sales and marketing consultant. I've been over 35 years in business, and I'm here to help you make more money more easily, more often. And I've been doing this for over 4,000 people for the last 30 years. Tell me, have you seen my website?
Yeah.
That was the question. Now, if they say, no, I haven't seen your website, they've actually subconsciously accepted what you've already said previously.
That's very clever. Yeah.
But that's a nice little tip. Make a statement, follow it with a question.
Yeah, that's right. Because if I'm reading this right, if you just make a statement, sometimes you may come across as being conceited or something. But if you ask the question, you're engaging with the person, showing interest and asking for a reaction. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Well, I think this about confidence. This is a confidence thing. You know, this is all about confidence. And I've used the expression before many times, Joe. It's fake it till you make it. You know, confidence is an application of confidence. You don't have to be confident. You just have to feel confident at that time and make an application to be confident, even though you might be quivering inside. Yeah. Outside, you're confident. But I think confidence sometimes comes at the end I think sometimes you need the skills first to be able to do what you do, because that then gives you more confidence.
Yeah.
So what my job has always been, and what my thoughts today are, is to give people some ideas of the skills they can get to become more successful at selling and marketing and conversion and closing and upselling and all the rest of the wonderful stuff that we talk about. And as I said, it is about an emotional job as well. This is about closing the girlfriend, closing, selling your house, selling your car, whatever it is. This is all about communication. And if you're confident, people are less likely to to kick you on the price.
Yeah.
Confident. You come in a bit shaky and go, well, I think my price is this. People will go, oh, no, I'm sorry, that's too much money. But if you go in and you look somebody in the eye and go, this is £555, not a penny more, not a penny less, they're less likely to negotiate with you.
That's a great tip. Thank you so much. And what I want to do now is, because I know we could talk all day, and I know definitely that you always add lots of value during any conversation I have with you. Here's a real one for you, and I want you to just give some thought before you answer this, because I know as soon as I fire this question at you, right, your mind is just going to explode with loads of solutions. So just before you do answer, I just want you to really think about the one thing that can be the best for our viewer. Right. So what is the most effective sales strategy you've ever used or come across?
I've been waiting for this question because this excites me, Joe. This gets me going, this does. And I find so many people not doing it. And I would say over the 4,000 private consultations and group consultations that I've run over the many years, I would say 99.5% have never used this skill, never used this one thing that can make a difference, a huge difference to the process, to the whole thing, from starting off to getting paid for what you're doing, irrespective of what that doing is. And that one thing, that one key missing component in selling is that people do not use contrast.
Right. Just explain what you mean by that, please, Steve.
We're talking about price, because at the bottom line, at the end of the day, Joe, it comes down to money. It comes down to figures and numbers. Of course, relationships are important. Of course, endorsements and great reviews are important to build your story. Of course, great selling skills are important. But when it comes down to the bottom line, Joe, the bottom line is that people are going to say, how much is it going to cost me? Yeah. And if they haven't enunciated that, they've asked themselves up here already, many times in that conversation, what's going to be the cost? Now, again, I'll reiterate, this could be an emotional cost.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily have to be a financial cost. So this is obviously going to be allowed to be a personal issue as well. But going back to the business side of it, when you do not use contrast when quoting your prices, everything is going to appear too cheap or too expensive.
Yeah.
Let me repeat that. If you don't use contrast, everything that you say will appear to be too cheap or too expensive.
Yeah. And I've got to be honest, before I started using that principle, then I know that I made loads of mistakes.
These are fundamentals, Joe, and part of your podcast season that you're running. If this one thing is taken by one person out of the hundreds and thousands that will watch this, it's going to make a huge difference to them. Let me give you an example. I had a client who was going for a salary review. He was employed. Well, he was a contractor. He was going for his contract review with the financial controller of the business.
Right.
And he phoned me up. He said, Steve, I'm on 70 grand a year. I'm going for my review. Do you think I should go for the same 70 grand a year? And I said, okay, John. To cut a very long story short, I asked him what he'd achieved. He was a software developer, by the way. He wrote coding for this company that manufactured stuff. And he said, last year I wrote a bit of coding for them. By the way, a lot of coding or something. Please forgive me. People will understand if they're in the game. He said, I wrote some coding that saved them £62 million last year in their manufacturing process.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And I said, well, what you do when you go in and the guy sits you down and he goes, I'm just going to do your contract review for next year. Say, right, let's just look at the plus points. And I said, you use the contrast of your 62 million. Right?
Yeah.
There's your contrast. And he said, I've helped save 62 million for this company last year. By the way, not just this year, but the years going on.
Yeah.
You know, the savings don't stop after year one.
No.
The savings continue. And he said, and I said, and ask him for 150,000.
Yeah.
He phoned me the following day and he said, Steve, the guy didn't blink an eyelid.
That's brilliant.
And he said, 150,000 is acceptable to us. He was going in for 70 grand again. That's how much he valued himself.
Yeah.
And he used contrast, and his price then was a peanut, wasn't it, compared to the savings this company had made?
Yeah, I mean, if that's 10 years, that's over 600 million pounds.
Half a billion pounds.
Yeah.
Have a guess what his contract will be next year and the year after. So the point is this, Joe, and everybody else listening today, the point is this, is that if you can find out the challenge with somebody, and as I said to you in the 4-stage process, this is all linked, by the way, what's it costing them? What's it costing them this problem? It could be, I can't get enough clients, or I can't get enough people to buy my product. Okay. What's it costing you a year not to have that? Well, I'm losing 10 clients a month. Well, how much is each client? £1,000. So you're losing £10,000 a month. Yes. How long is it going on for? It's going on for 2 years. So it's not a 10 grand problem. It's a £120,000 problem times 2. So it's a £250,000 problem. And by the way, I can solve your problem and it's not going to cost you £250,000. It's only going to cost you 5 grand. Now, all of a sudden, the contrast principle has made my fee or my figure or whatever that is infinitesimal compared to the problems they've got, because you're there to solve them. And at the end of the day, Joe, you're here, I'm here to purely solve people's problems.
Yeah.
Be it emotional, financial, or otherwise.
Exactly.
Bottom line.
Well, listen, Stephen, it's an absolute pleasure, as always. And I know, right, you've already been up for, I'm not sure how many hours, a lot. I've interrupted, you've been kind enough to interrupt your holiday to speak with me. So I'd just like to say thank you so much, mate. You're absolutely brilliant. And remember, you can always get in touch and I can connect you with Stephen because he's out there and he really wants help. So take it easy, bud, and have a brilliant day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. And good luck to everybody else and happy Easter.
All right, thank you. Hello, now we're at the health, wealth and mindset section of this session's podcast. And first of all, what's been giving me some interest and I thought, what's the best way that I could give you some tips on the wealth section of the podcast? And I've been looking at how everyday households are struggling with meeting everyday daily living expenses such as heating, electricity, gas and food. And there are many people, many of you in the UK, who are really suffering to feed yourselves, feed your family. And what I'd like to touch on today is any borrowings you may have, whether that be personal borrowings, mortgages, and something else that I learned about, which I just want to touch base with you on. First of all, there are some loan sharks, if you like, lenders out there who may well come and say, oh, I'll lend you £100 and just pay me back, not right away, when you can. And then 2 weeks later, and this is what I've heard from the news, I have no personal experience of this myself, but I've heard from various media reports that then they come back 2 weeks later and start putting pressure on and then double the money and say, right, I need £200 back now. And, you know, it's really putting people under stress and strain. And then it's a spiral in debt. And there are many debt agencies and services and charities that are reporting that this is what is happening. So the increases that are happening are affecting most people in the UK. People who seemingly before this issue were earning really good money and now find that maybe they can't afford the mortgage or maybe they're struggling to feed the family. What you can do is people often get stressed when they've got debt to service. Now, the lenders are feeling just as exposed as the borrowers at the present time. So what do I mean by this? Well, if you've got a loan regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, whether that be a mortgage or a car loan or a loan for electrical appliance or something that you bought, right, that lender has lent the money on the basis and on an agreement, a written agreement, that you're going to repay it. So they're feeling pretty nervous at the minute because they recognise that available capital is reducing because of the money that's being spent on daily living expenses such as food, electricity, gas, running the household. So rather than default, i.e. default means that you do not make any payments, then the lender starts to send letters from solicitors and threatening maybe repossession of the goods that you received. Well, if you contact them and say, look, I'm having a bit of an issue at the minute, I'm struggling, and you can also go to the Citizen Advice Bureau because they have regular dealings with this sort of thing and they have a great deal of knowledge in this area. You can go to your lender and set up a payment plan. Now, please remember, I do not know your personal financial circumstances and you may need to take professional advice. The thing is that if you go to a lender and tell them the truth and say, look, I'm going to be struggling for the next, 6 to 12 months until I know what's happening with the cost of energy. Can we come to a special arrangement? This is my budget. This is how much income I get per month, per week. And this is what my current expenditure is. I need to revisit this so I can make it affordable so everyone can be kept happy. Then what do you think the lender's going to say? Now, your immediate action may be, no, they're not going to accept that. Well, actually, they could well do. Now, I'm not saying, right, that this may or may not affect your credit rating. But I know what definitely will affect your credit rating. If you're marked down as missing payments, right, the credit reference agency will mark that against you once it's reported. And you will probably find yourself not being able to take out any further credit for some time to come, possibly even years. So what I'd suggest on a wealth basis is go through a budget plan, look at your income, look at your expenditure, see where you were necessary expenses, right? So put them down into 3 categories. Essential, that means money that you must spend. You've got to spend that to live, right? Could be for your children, for yourself, just to heat your home, right? Because I know there are some of you out there who are even questioning whether you can heat your home. So go through your expenditure. Essential, discretionary, which means that you could do without it if you really needed to. And then luxury is where that's just something that you have to reward yourself, basically. So first tip is break down your expenditure to the cost of living, to essential, discretionary and luxury. Then contact any lenders that you have loans with and say, look, I've carried out my expenditure against my income and this is what it leaves me with. What can we come to? What arrangement can we come to? Which means that you're going to be kept at least receiving some payments from me, and then once everything gets back to normal, we can resume the normal agreement. Does that make sense? How helpful was that? Great. So, one of the other ways that I look at helping you, and I help my clients, is in the area of health. Right now, each week I'm going to be giving you a simple health tip. It doesn't need to be where you go down to the gym for 2 hours a day and you're pushing out the weights, although that's perfectly okay if you want to. These are just simple things that you can do to make your life easier. So what I'd like you to do is you could start just every weekend and then maybe build it up to 1, 2, 3 times a week and then maybe every day in the week. But I want you to take a walk on the wild side. Imagine taking a walk on the wild side. What does that mean to you? Well, in the context of what I mean taking a walk on the wild side is walking is proven to be a brilliant way to exercise, and it can also relieve stress. And when you do it at a pace which is a little bit testing for you. So instead of just bumbling along slowly, like you're walking around the shop looking at products, actually get a bit of a pace on. And move your arms, get a pace on so it actually increases your heart rate, increases your breathing, and actually you become warm. And do that for about 20 minutes. And that's about the time where anything after that, then if you want to walk for a little bit longer, 20 minutes plus is great because then your metabolism speeds up, your body starts to know that it's exercising, and that's a really good way to get into an exercise regime. And the other thing as well is when you're doing it, take in the views every now and again. Just stop maybe, and look around. If you're walking up a hill, just stop, take in the views, and then start again. Make sure that you have water with you as well. And you can buy lots of different receptacles for water. You can either carry a bottle, or you can have a bottle in a rucksack, or in fact there are waist belts now that have water carriers in them. So that's my top tip for you in the area of health and how you can get yourself feeling healthier. And then finally today, I'd like to look at mindset. Now, you remember on the last podcast, I looked at the fact that start the day with a positive affirmation. Right, and we looked at what sorts of messages you could give to yourself to help you feel better for the day. What I also want you to do as well is start the day finished, which I touched on last time. Starting the day finished, right, actually starts the night before you go to sleep. So the last thing, for instance, I do when I finish my day's work is I write down what I've achieved for the day and what I still got to achieve tomorrow. And I make that the first thing that I deal with when I come into work. Now, if you take that a stage further, you can do that with your life. with your life duties, right? Effectively, what you do at the end of the day, at night time, maybe when the kids have gone to bed, you're sitting down, you're relaxing, then instead of just plumping yourself in front of the TV and just sitting there for hours, and by the way, that's all right if you've got a favourite program that you like to watch. The fact is, though, just spend 5 minutes writing down what you want to achieve the next day, what maybe you've not achieved that day that you should have achieved and that you'd written down the previous night. Because remember, this can be a journal, right? So you're writing this each day and you can cross out as you're doing it during the daytime when you achieve it. And any that you do not achieve during that day, you carry forward to the end of the day so you can have that down as the first thing that you attack the next day. So let's say when you sit down at the end of the day, you write 10 things that you want to achieve the next day. And you start off really well. In the morning, you wake up, you have your positive affirmations, you're reading your list and you're thinking, right, okay, this is what I've got to do. And by the way, just have a brilliant day could be number one each day, what you want to achieve. Because if you can have a brilliant day each day, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Right, so write down the 10 things, and then in the morning, and then during the next day, you can put a line through to show that you've achieved it. And at the end of each day, you look at that list of 10, and if you've got 8 done, and there's still 2 remaining, on that evening when you're writing your next 10 things for the next day, you carry forward 2 of those, so you've only got 8 that you've got to add. And as you go through the days, the weeks, the months, the years, and you look back at these journals, you will see, you can see it's evidence how much you've achieved. Right, so starting the day finished isn't just about one day. Right, no. Starting the day finished is your new life regime, your new life habit, something that will stick with you. And you can tell your kids, your grandkids, because you do this. When you do this, right, this will change your world, your life for better. So that's this week's visit to Health, Wealth and Mindset. And the end of today's podcast on Pull Up a Sandbag with Joe. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed delivering this to you. And remember, have a brilliant day because you are brilliant. Thank you. And see you next time.